This tutorial looks at the introduction of lists into our web page. Lists are hugely important when it comes to, again, format and layout and presentation of information. In total, there are 5 different types of lists. I'm going to introduce all 5 of them, but really, in actual fact, I'm only going to advise you to use 2 of them, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look at what the lists are. First of all, there's an ordered list. Now this is very simply a 1, 2, 3 list or an ABC list, and those kind of lists. Now there's a number of different types of order, and we'll talk about those, but it actually means that whoever comes first is better than whoever comes second, or is better than whoever comes third, and so on. So where you express an order to it. And again, the tags here that we're introducing are OL for ordered list and then LI for list item. So there's 2 different tags here, and we'll talk about those and introduce those in a minute in the actual document. Then we have an unordered list. An unordered list is what we would normally refer to as bullet points, where there doesn't have to be any particular order to a list. So for instance, a shopping list would be an example of this, where it doesn't make any difference, or shouldn't make any difference, if you have 3 items on the list, whether it's butter, milk and sugar, what order you get them in. Okay, or what order you put them into your basket. It really doesn't make any difference as long as all the things on it are in it. Okay, so that's an unordered list, normally bullet points. Again, there's 2 different types of tag used here, which UL for unordered list, and then again LI for list item. A description list. Now this is normally used where you're maybe putting in vocabulary, where you have a term and then a definition. Okay, this is still used, but my advice would always be to use a table in here, because a table is going to give you a lot more control over your information, your layout, and you can order it in real time. You can sort it in real time in Expression and other decent browsers and decent creators. Okay, so my advice would be to use a table rather than a description list in this case. But I'll show you what they are and I'll introduce them to you. The last 2 items here, the menu list and the directory list, both of these were introduced way back when HTML was created, first of all, way back in 1989, and it was implemented in the first number of browsers, but is no longer really used. So, it's a menu and a directory. So if I use either a menu or a directory, both of these will look exactly the same as an unordered list in a modern day browser. So there's no real point in spending too much time on them. I thought it was interesting and important to introduce them so that you know what they are. If you come across them, you'll say, oh God, he never said these, but they're in a modern day browser, they're displayed exactly the same as an unordered list. So we'll jump in first of all and we'll have a look at the syntax or the layout of an ordered list. Okay. So in this case here, we can see from here down to here. So we've got OL at the top and OL at the bottom, which is ordered list and ordered list. So this is the beginning of our list. This is the end of our list. Okay. And you can see every item in between it has an opening LI tag and a closing LI tag. Okay. So we can see Manchester United, Manchester City, Spurs, Chelsea and Arsenal are the 5 items on my list. Okay, so very important that you have them in the order that you want, because this is actually an ordered list. So let's skip on to this. On top of those new tags, I've also got a couple of ones which I've introduced here, strong and big. Okay, now these are the equivalent of tags that we've already introduced. Strong is the equivalent of bold, and big is the equivalent of font size +1. Okay, so it's slightly making your font slightly bigger than normal font around it and so on. So that's all they mean. If you come across them, that's what they mean. So I'm just introducing new tags as we go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out to my notepad and my browser, and I'm going to just create an ordered list. So I'm just going to go paste that in there. Bit of laziness, but what I'm doing here is copying and pasting, but then again, that's being efficient. Okay, and instead of font characteristics, I'm going to put in lists. Okay, and ordered list, okay, which is a little bit, it's going to be in bold, and then we've got ordered list down along here. Okay, so I'm just going to press return here. No need to leave them all in the one line, so you can see that we've got a line break after it and a horizontal rule at the end. So I'm just going to go file, save, and then refresh. Okay, and what I have here is an ordered list with Liverpool, Man City, Leicester City, Chelsea, and Man United. Okay, so they're the top 5 teams. Obviously, this is looking at the Premiership at the moment and so on. Okay, so that's the creation of an ordered list. Now, on top of that, I just want to say that there's a couple of other things that we can introduce here. There's a number of different types of ordered list. Okay, now, as I said, they're not very exciting, but they are available to us. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back in here for a second. Okay, so what we have here is we can actually put in type equals. Okay, and if you look at it here, type equals A. All right. In total, there are 5 different types of ordered lists. Okay, now if I all of you will come up with these if I actually sat down and said, listen, what are they? Because at the end of the day, we've got 1, 2, 3s. We've also got Roman numerals. Now, this is very, very specific. Your Roman numerals could be capital Roman numerals or small Roman numerals. Okay, and then you've got your ABCs, and your ABCs could be capital A's, capital B's, capital C's, or small a's, B's, and C's. Okay, so in total, you've got 5 different types. Okay, if you don't specify a type right here, which is or attribute, it will automatically revert to the norm, which is 1, 2, 3s. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste my list here very, very quickly, just to show you how simple this is. So I'm going to just in fact, I'm going to go back one here and copy this whole thing here. Copy, and I'm going to paste it 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm changing very little here. After pasting 5 times, ordered list with type A. Okay, and all I'm going to do in here is space type equals capital A. Now, if I just go file, save, and then refresh, you'll see that my second list will go ABCs. Okay, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy and paste a lot of stuff here with type, with type, with type, and with type. Okay, with type 1. Right, so this is the norm anyway. This is the default, equals 1. Type equals small a. And then onto the Roman numerals, type equals I. And finally, type capital Roman numeral I. Okay, file, save, and then refresh. Okay, so now you can see what we have in total here is ordered list with type A, with type I. Sorry, I didn't actually, this one here I put in small I. You can see that there, so I put in capital I. File, save, and then refresh. And then with small i's, with small a's, and 1, 2, 3s. Okay, as I said, with type 1, there's no point in doing that. Just leave it normally without any type, and that will be the default anyway. But I just want to show you that these are the different types of ordered lists you can have. Again, not very exciting, but just important to look at the different attributes that we've got there. Okay, so jumping back to my PowerPoint for a second. Okay, so that's the ordered list. Next one, we're going to have a look at unordered list. Now, there's very little in the difference here between an ordered list and an unordered list. The only thing we're changing here is the OL changes to UL at the top and the bottom, and it puts it in at bullet points. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the same kind of thing here. I'm going to jump back into my web page, and I'm going to just copy my heading, which says ordered list. I'm going to go, be really lazy about this. I'm going to copy this one here, and I'm just going to change a few things that I need to. Instead of ordered list, I'm going to go unordered list. First one, we have types again here, but we're not going to introduce them quite yet. Okay. Unordered list and unordered list. Okay. Now, because I don't want any order to it, I am going to just do the very simple thing: bread, milk, cheese. Okay. And I'm going to get rid of the last item on the list. So we don't need 5. We can do it 4. We can do it 3. We can do whatever we want. File, save, and then refresh. So my unordered list is bread, milk, cheese, and tea, as you can see there. Difference is I've got bullet points on top rather than my numerics, okay? And again, very straightforward, nothing unusual there, nothing difficult there, okay? Again, I mentioned that there are attributes that we can change the actual type as well. And again, these types aren't all that exciting either. So if I wanted to, I can put in, there are 3 types here: square, circle, or disc. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the 3 of these, and just all it will do is change my bullet point at the beginning from you know, a disc to a circle or a square. Okay, now somebody's going to ask the question, can I not put in my own icon? Can I not put in my own image in here? You can. We'll do that much later on when we deal with images in a later tutorial. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to put in width type square. I'm going to put in type equals square. Again, nothing too exciting here. There's 2 others, disc and circle, so I'll do those very quickly. You can see which one is the default in a second when I do these. And file, save, and then refresh. Okay. So what we have here is we have square, and we have disc, and we have circle. So you can see that the disc is the default. Okay. You can see if I don't put any type with an unordered list, I'm automatically going to get a disc, and I've got a square, and I've got a circle. So again, not very exciting, but it does achieve your aim, and it does show me that I have attributes for my my different types of ordered list. Okay, so with this in mind, I'm going to just move on to the next one here, which is looking at the whole idea of a description list. Now, we're not going to do this one because, as I mentioned, you're better off actually using a table to achieve the exact same aims. Okay, so what you've got here is, if I just bring it across here, you've got the new tags here are DL for description list at the top and DL for description list at the bottom. Then you have DT for description term, which is a mouse, and closing that. And then you have a DD for a description definition, and then you close that. So for every DT, you have a DD. Okay, so underneath each one, I've actually indented them to make it a little bit more obvious. They won't be indented in the actual in the example, but it makes it a little bit more obvious what they're trying to do. So I'm just going to close this, and what you've got here is you've got description list, a mouse, a small rodent-like creature, a system bus, a computer's mode of transport, and a keyboard, a board on a wall for hanging keys. Okay, so all of these things here, this is a description list, and as I said, we're not going to dwell on this too long, because really, when it comes down to lists, these aren't really used anymore. Anybody who's who's worth their salt will be using tables really for this, because you have a lot more control over what you do and how it's displayed. Okay, and then the last 2 here are the menu list, and again, the only difference that changes here is instead of OL or UL up on top, we've got menu, and we've got menu on the bottom, and we've got again your list items. Okay, so with this in mind, the reason I'm not dwelling on this one is because even if we do use the menu list syntax, it will still show up like an unordered list. Okay, so when I look at this, it'll still show up with your bullet points, and so there's no point in really using that anymore. And the same with the last one here, which is your directory list. And your directory list is, again, instead of OL and UL on top, you've got DIR on top and DIR on the bottom. But again, it's shown in a modern day browser as an unordered list. So there's no real point in us dwelling too long on that either. Okay, just to recap, and this is just showing how we've moved on in the last few tutorials. On the left hand side, we've all the tags that we've dealt with up until this point in time. And on the right hand side, we've all the attributes that we've dealt with up until this point in time. The only one that we haven't actually used, but I've talked about it, is the p-align equals left or p-align equals right, which is ones we'll introduce when we're dealing with expression a little bit later on in one of the tutorials. But at the moment, we're moving along quite nicely, and we're learning how to use tags and attributes. And that's the whole point of this particular set of tutorials. Before we move into maybe using HTML editors, etc., is that we understand the layout of HTML so that we can actually deal with it much later on in the course when we need to copy and paste different pieces from other sites or from YouTube or whatever the case might be. So we're just going to finish up here with the text editor. The text editor level of difficulty, it's a little bit more difficult than obviously the HTML conversion program. There's a bit of a learning curve, but its effectiveness can't be denied. You can create any site at all from a text editor. Do people use text editors? Yes, they do, but they use them in conjunction with HTML editors, which is what we'll be looking at moving on to the next tutorial and on from there.